Well, hello, Groovy Souls. Welcome back to the High Vibe Home podcast. I'm sitting here with one of my lovely sisters. We have Mia Magik with us here today. So excited to have her back on the show. It has been years, literally years, until since we've had you here and many different variations of this podcast. We've both grown so much. So, welcome, sister. So happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, babe. So happy to be here.
Mia is nothing other than just a magical being. I mean, there's a lot more to you, but the core essence of what Mia brings to the table is magic, living your most magical life. And she has been, I've seen this woman like really step into her power in so many ways and own her craft and be the witch that she is. So we're going to get into something very special because she just launched her first book, wrote her first book, and it is out in stores now, right? Or is it still in pre-sale? We're out,
Yeah,
we're
January
live.
30th, it's out.
Yeah. So we are going to talk a little bit about what's inside of that magical book, maybe a little bit of the process, because I know that writing a book, from what I've heard, is a whole process in and of itself, and just see where else this conversation takes us. So, Mia, why don't you first start out by telling us, where, like, from before you kind of got into your path as a witch, what do you feel like really led you here to create this magical life that you lead today?
Pain, yeah, agony, in inner turmoil, and depression, and anxiety, and feeling completely lost and alone and isolated. What led me to my magic and to my craft was feeling like the world around me did not understand me and did not know who I was, and clearly was not capable of believing the things that made me feel really good and feel really happy, and the things that I wanted to believe for myself and about the world. And I was so lost and so disillusioned and so unhappy in my life, just feeling so miserable and really hopeless, honestly. And it was reaching a certain point of hopelessness. I had moved to LA from New York and broken up with my boyfriend that I moved here with and had a job that I hated. And I just was like, I can't believe how different my life is from what I dreamed it would be when I was a little girl. And I was just wrapped in my fantasy and my fairy tales. And I thought that I was going to have this big, beautiful, magical life. And life looked about as opposite of that as it could. And I just felt so frustrated and so unhappy and so like, I can't live like this anymore. And so I figured, well, then what can I do about it? And what I could do was believe in magic. And I could think back to the moments that I had in childhood where I would be just completely enchanted by this story or these particular characters, and I could strive to be more like them instead of a character that I was playing that was very far from who I really was in my essence, and really just didn't feel good. She was not a she was not a pleasant person to be or to be around. And so that's really what led me to it, was like, okay, if Harry Potter one day just finds out he's a wizard and then gets invited to Hogwarts and then goes to Diagon Alley and sees all these other magical people around him, why can't I do that for myself? And if nobody else is going to give me the Hogwarts invitation, then maybe I have to build it. And it just was one of those, I mean, it was not a sprint for me. It was not like one of those instant Kundalini awakenings and then all of a sudden you're divine incarnate and everything's perfect. It was a very slow marathon for me. And you were one of the people that really got me into really owning the witch and the craft and what that was going to be like for me and in my life, and a great inspiration for me. And I really took all of those beautiful seeds of the witchy women in my life that they planted within me, and I nurtured them and I watered them and I tended to them, and I eventually got to watch them blossom and grow and fruit and flower, and my life has become, yeah, just totally an incredible magical expression of what I once just read about in fairy tales.
I mean, look at where that's grown into. It's
Yeah.
become many different variations, different flowers, plants, trees, but I see you as this like really strong oak tree now, like grounded in your, presence and your message and your word and your everything that you've really standed strong and firm in. And it's a journey. And I think that's really important to recognize because it's not a linear path. You know,
No.
it's you got to get into the fire. And a lot of people don't realize that the path of the craft is actually so much about shadow work. There's so much about going into that shadow and loving it and honoring it and nourishing it and shining your light in it. You know, it's not a path that really is like this love and light fairy tale, but you can become that once you kind of go through those deep, dark tunnels. So,
Absolutely. I mean, that's
yeah.
how to make your spells come true. You know, people are like, oh, can you
Mm,
cast a spell for this thing to just like quickly and easily eradicate it from me? I'm like, no, but I can tell you the origin of the wound of the thing that's blocking you from having the spell come true. And you can work on that, and then your spell will come to fruition. And yeah,
mm,
it's really, that is the path, right? Like that is the healing and the excavation and the unearthing of the shadow is what allows you to manifest what you desire.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people and just an assumption that things are like quick and that if you're a witch, you're like instantly going to be able to have like everything in life. But that's actually the opposite. It's kind of what a little bit of that disillusion came from like the patriarchal view of the witch and the spells that we, you know, cast that are not even close to the life that we live. I would really love to see the like a true iteration of something in media that actually represents what we actually are, you know, because it's definitely far from what is painted. So for someone who maybe is listening, and I mean a lot of my listeners have come from this craft and probably identify as a witch or are interested in, but those who maybe are just arriving here and kind of new on the path, what has been one of the things that has really led you to owning yourself as a witch and really reclaiming that word?
Oh my goddess. Well, you know, I remember you're one of those OG Instagram accounts. You had the craft of the wise, and
Back
just
in the day.
that word, like it's
Mhm.
about wisdom. And what is wisdom but embodied knowledge? So we learn lessons in our life. We have challenges. We have things that we must face and obstacles we must overcome. And when we learn those lessons, we can either allow them to stay as just conceptual information, or we can embody what we've learned and walk forward informed by it. And so when I learned that the word meant wise, and then craft, also an, you know, old German word for strength or skill, right? We're literally just strengthening the skill of our wisdom. And if that is this word that's been so demonized and so villainized, our own unique and eternal wisdom, then like what's really going on here? There's
Yeah.
that can't be right. Why is wisdom evil? And so there were many different phases for me on the journey, especially being you know, such a Harry Potter nerd. I'd be like, no, I'm a wizard like Harry Potter. I'm not a witch. Like I don't, you know, I don't associate with that word. And it really, honestly, it was the hat, my iconic, famous magic hat, you know, putting this hat on and wearing this symbol of evil, really, to other people, to
Mm,
the mainstream, and seeing the way that people, you know, that was my first viral content, was with the hat. It was this, again, it was this iconic symbol that meant something so dark and so scary and so bad and wrong to so many people. But seeing it on a friendly, sweet, pretty, well-spoken person who wanted to talk to you about magic and like your spiritual health was, I think, just like such massive cognitive dissonance for so
yeah.
many people that they really responded. And so when I saw how people were responding to the hat, it became so abundantly clear that people were desperate to reclaim this word and desperate not to feel like their wisdom, their spiritual gifts, their powers, whatever it is evil. No one wants to feel like that. Everyone wants to feel like they are safe to be in their magic and in their power. And we just simply haven't been for the last 2,000 years ish. And so it was such a profound gift to me to witness the way that this hat impacted people and the way that it gave people permission to say, oh, I'm a witch too, or I believe in magic too. And that was, it was really kind of like a chicken or the egg type of thing, where I kept feeling so encouraged and inspired by people being inspired by me wearing the hat. And I just realized, and then of course we do the deeper study and look into the history and really understand how incredibly deep this witch wound runs and why, and how many people were murdered and tortured for the wisdom of the earth and the wisdom of the plants, the only medicine we had for all of history until, the early 1900s, when JD Rockefeller started making medicine out of petrochemicals. And that was such a profound opening for me, an expanse of my own consciousness to witness how much people wanted it. And I realized that was, back to your first question, that was really what I had wanted my whole life too. I just wanted to believe in magic, and I just wanted a world where it was safe to believe in magic and where I was allowed to do that. And I was safe and accepted to believe in magic, and my magic was celebrated and life was magical. And it took me choosing that for myself and then seeing how it was reflected in the faces of others to be able to say, okay, wow, I am a witch. And that just means that I live in alignment with my wisdom, and I strengthen the skill of my wisdom, and I let that be what informs how I walk through my life. And that's really also, why the book is called IntuWitchin instead of just intuition, because when you put the wisdom into your intuition, it's not just about hearing it. It's not just like, oh, I got this little nudge that I ignored and then I regretted it. It's like, no, I am embodied in my awareness that this guidance system inside of me is offering me a path forward and a choice point that I must take, because that's what I'm in devotion to. And that's how I become who I'm meant to be in the most magical version of myself.
And you really owned it in such a big way. I mean, that the hat is no small hat, walking around the world and really embodying that character. And instead of it actually being this character, it is you. It's really who you shine as. And when you look at around the world, I personally think there's certain types of people who have a perspective on things being very mundane. Like, it's just like, oh, we're going about our day. Like, there's actions and rituals and things that we do on the day-to-day basis that just kind of gets us through the day, right? And then there's the like, well, what if we started looking at it with a lens of magic or having intention or everything? And that's really what, like with feng shui, it really brings us back to that intention behind why we're putting something there versus like, okay, let's paint it green because it looks good. No, let's paint it green because we're manifesting insane amounts of growth and wealth, or what is the intention behind it? And I think that is such a deep core foundation of the wise woman, man, craft, man, whatever you might, identify yourself as, but really stepping into that wisdom is allowing yourself to realize that the world around us, this energy that we create, is how we become that goddess like co-creator with everything around us, and going through life with that first perspective of just getting through the list and going through the check, like, okay, got my, breakfast made today, got this done. But then there's a layer of magic that you can add. Like, I'm putting rosemary because it protects me and my family, or all of those things. And it's really hard to like explain all that. Sometimes I find like when I first started, I was like, how do I tell people the magic that I'm living? Like, how does it come across? How do you deliver it, But I think it's just really coming back to being intentional too and allowing yourself to be in the moment.
Absolutely. And just following the guidance, feeling the little, do I feel drawn to put rosemary into this? Do I want to have fennel tea this morning? Like, am I adding licorice to my, whatever it is, right? It's all about just that listening and letting, even if your intention is just to listen and follow through on what you hear, that's really how you make the magic, is because you will receive your body, your relationship to the world around you. You know, of course, like there's a lot of noise in the world. There's a lot of distractions. If you're constantly distracted and constantly stimulated by things outside of yourself, it is more challenging to hear. But really, I just love that what you shared is like, you don't need even to tell people how or what you're doing to make your life magical. But if you can invite them just to listen to what their body or their
Exactly.
system says or asks of them in order to make their life magical, then you cannot help but instantly see results. You cannot
Yeah.
help but instantly see shifts and changes when you start to follow that voice and that guidance.
And that sort of leads us into, intuition. Like what does that mean for you other than being wise, but how have you found yourself being guided by this voice, this feeling? Like what is, if you were to try to define it for us, what would that be embodying for
Yeah,
you?
for me, I love how you said you're like an oak tree now. I really, those are the two like kind of home place trees, oaks and redwoods. I come from the redwoods. I've worked deeply with the redwoods, really learned how to communicate and speak with them and understand their language. And so intuition is about, for me, yes, like in the craft, we obviously praise the mother, and we've really worked to return the feminine nature of God to our relationship with the divine, not to exclude the masculine, but just to allow there to be both. And so for me, it's a really balanced energy of like external masculine and feminine. It's like sometimes there's going to be really clear like guidance and directive. Like, I need you to do this. I need you to go here. I need you to take this action. And sometimes it is going to be more of a feeling and more of a creative pursuit or more of a pleasure practice, or like, hey girl, like just sink into this song and dance for a minute, right? There's going to be ways that it's going to have a more masculine invitation for you, and ways that it will have a more feminine invitation. But for me, it's also not just about that inner voice and that inner wisdom and the wisdom that it takes to follow your intuition and say, oh, I got that little nudge. I'm actually going to do what I'm being invited to do rather than ignore it, which again is really easy in a society of mass distraction.
Mm-hmm.
But also for me, what the book is, and what has been one of the most impactful parts of both our work and connection together, and that was feng shui and your support of me and my dreams in doing that in my home, was such a powerful physical and like tangible way of me
Yeah.
understanding this particular part of what intuition means to me. And that is that it is an exploration of the law of correspondence in your own life. As above, so below, as within, so without. Everybody knows about the law of attraction, but not enough people talk about the law of correspondence, especially in terms of manifestation. And so that is what I feel like feng shui brought to my life, and that for me, intuition, I hope, will bring to other people's lives. And so far, everyone who's read it is saying, like, I'm just looking at everything in my life so differently now,
Yeah.
is that you can not only read this symbolic language of the universe, right? I have this serpent here, the types of crystals, the colors, the numbers, the astrology signs, the different symbols, even the shapes, right? Like in my first house, you're like, put a circular couch here so that welcomes and opens the space. It's very inviting. All of those things are information that we can gather from the universe, including circumstances in our lives. So like if your pipes burst, water is the element of emotions and creativity and sexuality. Is there something leaking, right? Is there something broken in the structure and foundation that holds your emotions? And so you can not only read this symbolic language and glean significance from everything that happens and everything around you, but then you can also cultivate divination sort of in opposition that creates the world around you. So that's why I've decorated my house and my office with this deep emerald green over and over again is because, as you said, it represents regeneration and growth and life and eternal abundance of the earth. And that has worked for me over and over and over again every time I use that color in my home. And so that's really what I've found IntuWitchin to be, is not only the wisdom to follow and to listen, but the wisdom to understand that everything is communicating to you. It's not just in that little voice. If you don't hear the whispers of God inside of you, that's okay, because God is every single thing all around you and is communicating with you using the oldest language on earth, which is symbol. All of our language even used to be pictographic and hieroglyphic. And so and a picture's worth 1,000 words. You can communicate so much more with just those symbols. And I find that that's what the universe does. And it's such a gift to be able to receive information from that language and then simultaneously, decorate your house in a way that is communicating in return, that's responding.
Yeah. Well, that is part of, I think, the missing link that I found, even why I devoted now my path to Feng Shui in this way, is because it brings things into the physical. And a lot of times we're focused on everything that takes us out of this physical realm. And we came here, we're humans, we're on this planet, we're in the physical form. So being here and actually embodying the space and taking up the space and recognizing how the space both impacts us in a positive, supportive way and also can hinder our growth in a lot of ways when things become stagnant. And I think when it comes to like our magic and our ability to connect to the deep wisdom, for me, like I'm obviously sensitive to space, but for me and personally, when something is in disorder and disarray within my space, it always reminds me to come back to myself. Like something's out of balance, something's going off, and then I can't actually hear the voice. There's something in the way for me to feel that sense of intuitive hit, or that little, feeling that I shouldn't go there or I should listen to this. And so a lot of it is it's just a dance between us and the environment that we live in and coexist in. And you've done a really amazing job at, I mean, this you guys, I got to see her castle that she's living in right now. She just moved into a beautiful place in Topanga, and we've been working on doing some feng shui there. But, just to see your level of like devotion and upgrade and manifestations, and, now you've got your book out, and it's just really cool. It's so fun to watch when someone actually puts the work in,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it does take work. It's not like arriving here to these places where success is at the forefront. It's arrived, right? And we were talking a little earlier, like the amount of effort and energy and everything that it takes to really run a team and manage everything. And, you really stepped into it beautiful. So tell us a little bit
Thank
about what your book really, like, if you were to give us in a couple sentences, what is your book really highlighting with the path of the witch, the wise woman?
It's really everything that I just shared sort of in those last two questions.
Yeah.
Is It's all about this symbolic language of the universe. So it describes all of and it has a lot of questions and a lot of journal prompts and a lot of rituals to give people an opportunity to experience this within themselves and in their bodies. So it's deeply informative in terms of the astrological archetypes and even the archetypes of the numbers and of the colors. And there's so many different ways of the language of the body, right? All the different parts of our body that have significance. And if you hurt your left leg, okay, well, that's the feminine side of my roots. How am I grounded and connected to the earth and to the mother? How am I walking forward in my feminine energy or not, right? There's so much around all these different things we can utilize to divine wisdom and information, practices you can use to, of course, build your magical life, and really what does it look like to live in alignment with your wisdom? What are the things that need to be healed in order for you to be able to manifest what you desire? And really, it's a great just guidance system for people to start utilizing and working on in their own life, again, so that you can understand the significance of what's happening. Tons of examples, tons of stories from my life, so many different incredible opportunities and ways to bring in this wisdom. And what's so beautiful about that is that it's going to be different and unique for everyone, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
wisdom looks different because our life experience is different, because our gifts are different, because our interests are different. And so it's a really all encompassing guide for absolutely anyone to be able to cultivate a deeper relationship to their higher self or their inner wisdom and guidance system, you know, sort of like your internal GPS, and also to be able to interpret this incredible language that the universe is using to communicate with us, and then have all of these different ways of responding and communicating in return.
Mm. Absolutely magical
Yeah.
as usual. I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
Do
just
you
really deeply exploring the law of correspondence. If it's above and it's below, if it's within and it's without, what is this thing within me? How do I work on that? What is this thing outside of me that I don't like, or I'm blaming, or I'm shaming? How do I witness that within myself? What can I do to really, you know, and you and I are so passionate about sustainability, and so there's a lot in there around how to generate and manifest abundance in a way that is far more connected to the earth. And, you know, that's a huge part of my
Mm.
mission that I really share. Like, everything in this house, everything is secondhand. And that's something that I'm really deeply devoted to. Even like my cloud couches, you know, I don't want to not have the luxurious things that I want. So I'm going to find cloud couches on Facebook Marketplace, you know, and
Yeah.
I really do that. And so there's a lot of different tips and tricks and ways that you can be supported in manifesting abundance, or manifesting love, or a new career, or a new home, or whatever the things are, by understanding that the way that your house is the home of
Mm.
your body is the home of your soul, and really just working on these
Yeah.
reflections between the micro and macrocosm all the time. And it's pretty good. I'm like, we're seeing a lot of amazing miracles happening just from my friends who like I got a couple of pre-orders and like brought them on this trip, and everybody got a copy, and it was so much fun to just see the miracles that already are unfolding in people's lives from being able to relate to and respond to their lives differently.
Mm. And I think that's really what a lot of us need right now. The world is really changing, and it's both for good and not so good, you know. It's all coming back to living our lives from the lens that we choose to live, right? So when it comes to kind of having a different approach to, like, you know, the world outside of us, where there's a lot of distractions, a lot of noise, a lot of the patriarchal programming, you know, it gets so loud out there. But when I find I need to like really drop in and connect and listen to my intuition, the quieter that I can become and the quieter my space can be, the more I can hear, you know, myself, my voice, my body, what is it telling me, you know? And I'm curious to hear what you kind of experienced when you let go and just let goddess take over, and what you've really seen in that magic and in that moment where you're kind of just trusting you're in that. Because I feel like the intuition is so much about that. It's about letting go, it's about trusting, it's about not knowing. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that you and I are similar in that I do have this very beautiful, like, unconditionally loving maternal force of energy that is the goddess who communicates with me. And I can generally feel a distinction between, like, oh, this is me as my higher self, and this is the entirety of the feminine consciousness in the universe
Mm,
guiding me, or asking me to do
yeah.
something, or you know, calling me forward, giving me a little cosmic bitch slap, because I need one of those every once in a while. And
Right.
um, and for me, I think there were, you know, the big piece that I was really struggling with on my journey was I'd reached a place where I was like, okay, I know who I want to be. I know what I want to do. I know how I want to feel. And I was good at making that happen. It was like, okay, I want to be magical and I want to live a magical life. And the one thing that I couldn't figure out for so long was my relationship to money and abundance. And so there was a big piece for me where I realized I had to kind of like reach rock bottom and not be limited by these old stories. And so the goddess made me prove that to myself. And there was a period of time where I had run, like my safety net had run out. My savings was empty. I'd spent my last dollar so many times, too many times to count, but then like my actual savings account was empty as well. It was like, okay, we have literally nothing left. And I then, like a week before I was supposed to leave on this like trip to Sedona, I like got a check for something and I like had some money and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And the next day I lost my wallet and I had no debit cards, no credit cards, no nothing. And I was literally supposed to leave like the next day for Sedona. And so I got a debit card rushed and it like came to my house and I'm like calling the people, like trying to figure it out. And they're like, oh yeah, like it was actually already activated by someone else and it didn't work and didn't go through because you didn't choose the right path. So someone had like stolen my mail and found out and got it. So I'm like, okay, fuck. Like I finally got one debit card and now I don't have any debit card and I'm supposed to leave on this trip. And so I had $150 in my Venmo account. And I drove through, like driving to Sedona from LA. So I like drove through Pasadena and I stopped in to visit a friend in Pasadena. And I was like, hey girl, can you go to the bank and get $150 out and I will give you this, I'll Venmo you this money because I don't have any money. I'm supposed to drive to Sedona. So I had some gas in my car and I just left. I just went for it. I was like, okay, fuck it. I'm going.
Yep.
Put $60 in my gas tank. Okay, we're down $60. Now we've got 90, and made it to Sedona, went to this incredible retreat, had so many insane synchronicities. Like I'd just connected with my dragons and I actually arrived at the house the day before everybody else did. And then when everyone was, finally coming into the house, I walked into the room that I had chosen that night, like in the dark, there was two entrances and I walked in from the other entrance and I saw at the top of the bed that I had slept in this green and purple statue of a dragon, which is exactly the colors of the dragon that I had just met. I'm like, whoa, that's weird. There was all these incredible magical things about this house. So I emailed the guy on Airbnb and I was just like, bro, I got to tell you, this is the most magical place I've ever been. Like, I feel so connected to this home. Is there any way I could get the owner's number? Like, can I talk to her? I just want to see what's up with her. And he was like, oh, no, I manage the house and she's not in town. And he's like, but if you love it so much, it's like $3,500 a night, this house. He's like, if you love it so much, we don't have any guests coming in for 4 days after you guys. So you can stay for an extra 3 days just by yourself. So the retreat ends. I stayed in the house for 3 days. We had this amazing healer and like nature guide who was like creating this beautiful nature experiences for us there. And after everyone else left for the retreat, he came over and did another session with me while I was staying in the house. And he was like, I just feel like Sedona's not done with you yet. I think that you should stay. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really have anywhere else to go. He's like, oh, you can stay with me. Like, just stay with me for the week. I got an extra spot. So I stayed with him for a week. And I was like, listen, I got to tell you, like, I don't have any access to money. Like I'm like broke, I'm not. I have some money in my bank account, but I'm not able to access it at all, whatever. And he was like, oh, that's fine. No worries. Like, how about this? If I buy the food, you cook it. Cause at that time I was still kind of like coming off my personal chef thing. So I'm like, great. Of course I'll make you dinner every night. Like, no problem. So we did that. And then finally I'm leaving the house and going back to LA. I've been in Sedona for like 10 days or 2 weeks or something at this point. And his friend calls him right as I'm about to leave. And she says, hey, could you take me to the airport? And he says, yeah, no problem. Sure. And I was like, wait, like, let me take her to the airport, please. Like, let me do something for you. You've done so much for me. He's like, okay, but I'm paying for the gas. And so I made it home with something like $80 still. And that was the most profound miracle and experience of like just allowing the universe to show up for me and leave me little signs and tell me to keep going and ask me to trust, and then miracles, like literal miracles. When does anyone ever just offer you a big beautiful Airbnb for nothing? Like, it doesn't happen like that. And I just kept feeling, that was before I had a strong connection to the voice of the goddess and I could really hear her.
Yeah.
But I could just keep feeling her calling me forward. Like, come on, child. Come on, my love. Come on, girl. Like, come on, keep coming, keep going. Come on, girl. And the way that I felt about magic and miracles after that, the way that I felt about being able to trust myself, I didn't actually like really start manifesting money until about a year later. But the trust that had anchored into me and the way that I followed every inclination that I had was, I believe, the foundational element that the goddess then really rewarded me with the abundance.
Right.
And what happened in that year after that trust was that I kept experiencing abundance that wasn't financial. It would be like
Right.
beautiful free homes to stay in, amazing trips that like someone else is facilitating and you just get to come and go. Like, those kinds of expressions of abundance just kept happening for me. And that was really like also a powerful lesson for me in the fact that money is just one form of abundance. It's just one like societally agreed on form of abundance. And abundance is this alive, conscious, vibrational frequency that you can attune to. And so that was really those miracles, that trust, and also just her, yeah, like having to free fall into it, having no other choice. Like, well, I am not sure what else I should do right now, so I guess I'll just take this leap of faith. And then like the net appeared. And
Yeah.
when it doesn't, you learn you have wings. And when you
Right.
don't grow wings, then sometimes you do fall flat on your face. But guess what? You're reborn.
Mm.
And so that was really one of the moments for me that transformed and shifted the trajectory of my life. And then I was hooked. I was like, okay, girl, I will let you show me and guide me and teach me whatever it is that you have for me to learn, because I trust you.
Mm. You just brought me back to like those moments where I was in, I guess initiated is the word, it's like
Yeah.
you open up that level of conversation. And I was going through a year and a day initiation through like Scott Cunningham's like Wicca book or something. And there was a part where the goddess was really being spoken of. And I wrote in my book of shadows at the time, like, okay, all right, goddess, like whatever you want me to do, like I'm your vehicle, I'm your vessel. And that was when I shortly came out with the Craft of the Wise, like my first Instagram witchy account. And the more I would listen, but then I would like fall back. I would stop listening, and that happens, I think, for anyone that's listening and like they want to know how to kind of get that connection. For me, it's always been like, okay, or not always, but during the initial stages, it was like I have this connection, but then I would be afraid of it. And then I would go back and be like, she's calling me back again. Like, here we go. She wants
Yeah.
something else of me because I gave that commitment. I gave her my body. I don't give her my body, but in a sense,
It's
I
a
I
vow.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a vow. I am here. I've chosen to be here on this planet to be of service in whatever way that looks like. And it's shown up in so many different branches. Sometimes it's my sustainability hat like yours, and I'm talking about how we can save the planet and making products about it. Or sometimes it's let's connect to her, let's get our feet on the soil, and it looks differently, right? And I think for anyone who's really listening that hasn't really had that vow yet with the goddess, where would you lead them to begin that?
Nature. Immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Nature. Go to nature. If you're a mermaid kind of girl, go to the beach. If you're a forest river kind of girl like me, go to the forest. If you're a mountain girl, go to the mountains. Wherever that natural environment is that you feel most at home, most called to, most nourished, go there, because that is where the goddess can speak to you so clearly. That is where there is nothing in the way. There is no distraction. There's no separation. It's just ease and grace and connection. And like, get your feet bare or get your ass naked and into a cold stream or waterfall, that would be the thing. And you don't have to, the thing about nature and the goddess and the great mother that I have found is she's like any good mom. It doesn't matter how long it's been. When you come home, when you come back to her, when you return, when you say, "Hey, mama, I missed you. Like, I love you. I'm here."
Yeah.
She's so grateful and she welcomes you with open arms. And I feel like that is such an important part of this remembering, is that the Father God that we've been taught about, I don't think that is the true Father God. Like, the true Father also wants what's best for you. And yeah, maybe like is like slightly more of the disciplinary one, but it's only to like keep you in line in order to actualize what's best for you, to follow that path. And I have found with the mother that she is just so loving and giving, and she always will welcome me home to her. And the problem is that we haven't been taught about either of these forms or facets of God. We've been taught about this punitive, shaming, unkind father who lives in the sky, who's watching everything you do, which, I mean, the universe is definitely watching everything you do. Like, nothing goes unnoticed, but in order to smite you and in order to, again, discipline you and make you wrong and bad. And like, that's the God that we've been taught about in major religion, in all three of the major religions that, populate the majority of this planet. And so that, I think, is the biggest challenge, is that none of us have been, or like, God bless the lucky people who grew up with, witchy pagan moms. Like, that must have been nice. But, none of us have been taught that there is a loving divine force that isn't out to punish you and isn't out to shame you and isn't out to make you wrong for doing the things that you enjoy in your life or that feel good. There is this incredible, eternal, and infinite creative life force energy that you can attune to. And that's why, for me, my intuition does feel like this balance between Holy Mother and Holy Father, and like good parents, and my parents had their issues, they did their best, but I have this dream of these parental forces, the Holy Mother and Holy Father, that I feel and I experience, and they are so beautiful and so magical. And I think that that's really the piece, that when you go back to nature and you go home to yourself and you return to, again, a forest or a lake or a beach, and you're connected to this beautiful, because like in the Green Man, there are many traditions where like there is the Father nature as well, and we've like stripped that. It's like, no, God is up here, out there. Like, Mother and Father God do not exist here on earth in nature. Like, yeah, right. And so that, for me, you don't have to make a vow. You don't have to say, I promise to never forget again. Like, it's okay to forget. We all forget sometimes, and we all fall off of our practices, and we all, like, don't do moon rituals every single time, some months, and it's okay, because the real nature of God loves us anyways. And that, I think, is why I experience this energy of the divine and of God so deeply in nature, is because it is a place where, there is savagery, right? Like, the lions do eat the wildebeests. That does happen, but it's all functioning in this beautiful, harmonious circle of life. And that's where I find that when I lead people out there, at my retreats, we do this full feminine embodiment Hogwarts experience at castles in Scotland and England and Ireland. And when I lead people out into nature in a way that they've never experienced before, they always find a new relationship to God. And that, I think, is the only thing that we ever need to make a vow to. We receive everything from this planet. Every drop of water, every bite of food, every breath of air we receive from this sacred planet. And when you can make a vow just to that alone, the miracles and the blessings that are bestowed upon you and that arise in your life are truly astounding. And so that's really why I just always lead people out into nature. Just go somewhere
Right.
quiet where you can hear that voice, whether it's the mother or the father or both, or a non binary royal parent. And you just allow yourself to receive that guidance and return home to your true nature more and more every time.
And that's really what the craft is. It's a dance with nature. It's believing that nature is that sense of wisdom. It's the church. Like it is such a huge component. And when I found out there was like a nature-based religious, spiritual, whatever, out there in the world, I was like, sign me up. Like I had already been, you go back to your little years in life and I was always outside, like always outside talking to my, imaginary friends out there. And it's just rekindling that within us. And I think that it's a lot easier when you get into nature to just surrender and let it be and let goddess and come through and get in touch with your intimate side in that space, because we live in these square boxes that have taken us so far from our natural ability to even like live with a tribe or be with our ancient indigenous ways, to be in a community, to be able to have all these different roles. And I think we're kind of edging back in that way in a new evolved form. But that's where using some of these rituals, some of these tools, some of these components that can help us feel like we're not separate from nature, but we're one with nature. That is it already, like every time I say that, I always am like, ah, oh, that's right. Like there it is, coming
There
home
it
to
is.
yourself,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we forget that like our bones, our physical body is the earth element. Our blood is literally water pumping through us. We breathe in the air that we are provided by the incredible natural world and the plants and the trees. And then there's fire, there's electricity making our hearts beat in every single moment. Like we are made of the elements of this universe. We are made of nature. And when we can remember that, like we are, and I know that you and I have such a shared agreement on this, is like that's the true abundance. The people that are
Yeah.
out like raping and pillaging the earth, I find that they don't seem to feel very fulfilled. Maybe you've got a lot of money, but you're not happy,
Right.
and I just love being able to know that, like, yes, I am incredibly financially abundant now in a way that I could never have imagined being from like fairy dust and pussy power, um, but
Yeah, we'll have
I
to get into
know that,
pussy power sex magic on another podcast for sure.
right? Yeah,
In
well,
your
we can
next
definitely
book,
do that.
right?
Definitely. Yeah. Next book is called Witchual. Sex magic is in IntuWitchin. So there's a big, beautiful practice in there. But yeah, like that's how I built it. And I think that that is also, to tie that in here, that is the abundant nature of the feminine, is our pleasure, is our sexual energy, is our creative capacity. And when we are wielding that and harnessing that in an empowered way, we are truly forces of nature. And
Yeah, we are.
we can then use our orgasm and our pleasure and our sexuality not only as manifestation tools but as healing tools as well. And that's like really reclaiming so much of the, this is like all the witch wound. This is all the wound of our wisdom, is having all of these things, the truth that we are nature, the origins of abundance inside of ourselves with happiness and fulfillment and our tribal nature and collaboration and connection with one another rather than competition. All of that is part of the witch wound that has been taken from us with our magic. And that, it does require a lot of courage to help reclaim that energy. And yet that's what we're doing and what we're here for. And when you give yourself over to that, the goddess really does, she supports you.
Yeah.
It's like having a sports team. You're like sponsored. The goddess
Yes.
sponsors you
Oh my
when you
gosh,
join her team.
100%. Yes,
Yeah.
I totally love that perception. That's a great one. Well, this has been amazing to have you back here with us. It's just like can't believe like how much time has passed, and the journey that, you've been on, I've been on, and here where we are now. So where can everybody get more Mia and more magical, and especially get a copy of this new book that you have birthed out into the world?
Yeah, so IntuWitchin is available wherever books are sold. So any outlet, it's published in the UK and in South America. It's all over the place, so you can get it everywhere books are sold. And it's available on audiobook as well. And I read the audiobook myself. And my website and Instagram and YouTube is all Mia Magik, Miamagik. So magic with a K on all of my little things, all my platforms. I got a lot of weird fake accounts on Instagram, so it's only just the one
Don't we all, though?
Miamagik,
Yeah.
and so much magic, lots of beautiful things coming. Have an embodiment journey launching in March, and yeah, just all the magic all the time.
Magic mode on always with Mia.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I've got one last question for you before we say goodbye.
Yeah.
What are some elements in your home that you love to incorporate that keep the vibes high?
Well, literally everything I've ever learned from you is number one. So circular shapes, right? Abundance through circular shapes, greens and golds and gem tones. My home is still decked out in all of those tones to manifest abundance and also love. And so now, like, my bedroom, my bed chamber has changed and is now all these beautiful salt lamps with oranges and purples and deep reds. And I keep the vibes high, I think, primarily with colors and with sacred objects and with the fact that everything is intentional. It's like everything makes an altar. The bookshelf is an altar. The cupboards are an altar. And so when you're building an expression of the magic you desire to draw into your life in a physical container like a bookshelf, I have certainly found that it is just exponentially more likely to come to fruition in your life. And I'm so grateful to you for showing me so many of these incredible practices that really have changed my life.
Well, thank you so much. I love it. I love our journey, and that it just keeps on going, keeps on
It does
going and
indeed.
going. All right, sister. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for devoting some time with us today. And
Yes,
you guys know where you guys will find all the details in the show notes. So we will see you all for another episode, another week, whether you're watching the YouTube or listening. Thank you for being here as always. And don't forget to let that chi flow, baby. I'll see you guys next time on the High Vibe Home podcast. Bye for now.
yay.